So welcome and thank you very much for joining us today in our webinar. I'm Desi from Clean Air Partnership, and with me on the call are Alia Darcy and Noah from Sustainability Solutions Group. They will introduce themselves shortly, very soon. But first, the way that today's webinar will go is I will provide a quick introduction and a land acknowledgement. Then we have a couple more questions in Menti that we want to ask you, and actually you probably can see them already, and if you feel so, please answer them as you're listening to the introduction. Then we will have the GHG 2 introduction, a demonstration, and this will follow by a Q&A at the end. Please feel free to write your questions at any point in the presentation in the Q&A box so we can monitor, and at the end of the presentation we'll have time to answer your questions. I wanted to acknowledge that Clean Air Partnership is a Toronto-based organization, and we acknowledge that the land on which we operate is the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and it is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. In our effort to provide more meaningful land acknowledgement, we usually show a short video that it's from Indigenous peoples, about Indigenous peoples and their culture. So hopefully we can learn something new. Today's video is why do Indigenous peoples hold their land as a sacred, and it's from Xiaonong Web.
Ever wondered why Indigenous peoples hold the land or items as sacred? You might hear an Indigenous person talking about the sacredness of the land, but what do they mean when they're talking about the sacredness of the land? Well, for my people, the Anishinaabe, it all goes back to our creation story. We believe that our spirit, the spiritual part of ourself, comes from the sky world or other places, but our bodies, our vessels, they come from the earth. I mentioned in a previous video about how Indigenous peoples view Mother Earth as being one of our own mothers, and that's because everything that it took to create our physical self had to come from the earth. That's why we hold the land as so sacred, because it's what created us and it's what's going to create our next 7 generations. That's why as Anishinaabe people we care so much about the health of Mother Earth, because we know that what we put into the earth is what's going to be put into our future 7 generations. So why an Indigenous person might hold the land or items as sacred, it all goes back to stories. It all goes back to our creation stories. And miigwech for watching.
Miigwech for watching with me as well. In the next slide, very briefly, I wanted to remind you about our tools, the Climate Policy Database, where you can find climate-related policies across the CAC network, and the Climate Action Atlas that tracks implemented emission mitigation projects. And this goes beyond CAC, as we wanted to showcase some very great examples. So I shared the links in the chat. Feel free to explore. Lastly, our upcoming events, Low Carbon Energy Systems 1-on-1. We're going to talk about this Friday at 10 a.m. And on February 8th, Township of King is going to share their adventure of developing green development standards. The best way to stay tuned for our upcoming events is subscribing to our newsletter, and I shared the link to the chat, but I'll share also our event page as well, so you can access and register if you're interested. Without further ado, I'm giving the word now to Alia.
Thank you, Desi, and thank you so much for hosting us today. Hi, everybody. I'm Aaliyah, and I am the Marketing and Communications Director at SSG. We're a climate planning consultancy, and we've worked with over 100 municipalities on their climate action plans, as well as other dimensions of implementing and undertaking climate action, including hopefully some of you who are on the call today. So today we will be sharing our GHG Calculator tool. Before we get into it, I would like to take a moment to introduce the other members of my team. Actually, I will hand it over to them. So Noah, I will hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
Thanks. Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Noah Purves-Smith, and I'm a application developer and modeler with SSG, and actually I'm the developer of this tool. And I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Emmy.
There, I'm Emmy Doe, and I'll just be providing some support in the chat. And I'm the marketing communications specialist at SSG.
Thanks, Noah and Emmy. Okay, so now let's get into the reason we're all here today, and that's the greenhouse gas calculator for municipalities. It's a tool that SSG developed in partnership with 3 municipalities across Canada, and I'll tell you more in a moment. But first, I'd like to get a lay of the land and who is in this room and what you know so far about the tool. So we'll flip it back to Mentimeter. And you can join us on menti.com. You can put in the code 5592452, or you can use the link that Desi has put in the chat. So our first question today is, have you tried using the tool? So it looks like one person has, but most of you haven't. Give you guys a few more seconds to keep responding to this question. Okay, we've got a lot of no's. So that's good to know where we're starting at for our demo. And it'll be great also to hear from those of you who have tried during the question and answer period. So let's move to the next question. So this is, which department do you work in? So we have a lot of folks from the sustainability departments of municipalities. But it also looks like we have some folks from planning and development, engineering and public works, finance, corporate services and city administration, and quite a few other. If you're from another department, please, it would be great to know which departments you're from. So if you'd like, you could share your department in the chat. Kind of fun to see this go up and down. It looks like sustainability, planning and development, and engineering and public works are in the lead. Okay, so we do have a good sense now of who's in the room. So the next and final question we'd like to ask you is, are you using other tools to integrate climate considerations into your decision-making processes? I see that quite a few of you are, which is wonderful. Hopefully the GHG calculator can help support what you already have in place. And some of you are not yet. And so hopefully this will help you get started. So I do see that there's a couple of people who have raised their hands. We will be taking questions at the end. So you can type in your questions in the Q&A section. And if there's anything else you are raising your hand about, please pop that question or concern into the chat. Oh, I see the chat is disabled in this webinar. Okay, Desi, is it possible for you to enable the chat for... Okay, it looks like Desi is enabling the chat for all of you to participate. So, if you're raising your hand right now, something's going on that you want to say, please state it there once the chat is enabled. And I see a few other questions like how we're going to access the tool. We're going to answer that over the course of what we're presenting today. And once we have a chance to go through it, we will take more questions. So let's move back to SSG's slides, please. Great. Okay, thank you. So let's move to the next slide. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to share this tool with you. So we're really excited about this tool because we think the GHG calculator could play a potentially significant role in helping municipalities understand the climate impacts of their decisions and to kind of bring that into their day-to-day work and investment decisions municipalities are constantly making. So the way that you can access the tool is from the Microsoft Store. It's a Microsoft Excel add-in that you can download, and Noah will go over about how to kind of get started with the tool shortly. And we designed this tool with the city of Calgary, the region of Durham, and the city of Ottawa. All three of these communities were facing some challenges around calculating the impact of projects. And so this is really designed to meet their needs and hopefully the needs of other municipalities as well. So the next thing is, why use this calculator and why did we design it? So we really designed it in response to some issues we were seeing. So for example, we were finding that in the communities we work with, sometimes the sustainability departments are kind of overwhelmed and burdened with having to calculate greenhouse gas impacts for projects across other departments. In some cases, the cities we work with didn't have an efficient tool or system for looking at greenhouse gas impacts, or they were struggling to figure out how to collaborate and calculate things across departments. So kind of at the most basic level, this is a tool to make it easier and simpler for you to calculate greenhouse gas emissions related to all kinds of projects. It could be something as simple as kind of doing some retrofits and installing LED light bulbs in a building to make it more energy efficient. It could be something more complicated related to transportation policy or starting a compost program, for example. And so one great feature of this tool is that it kind of is a way for you to explore different potential scenarios for programs. So you can punch in data related to different potential programs you might like to develop. It'll help you evaluate the program, and you can then compare different outcomes. If something is too high in terms of the number of greenhouse gases it's generating, or it's not reducing them enough, you can then go back and see what you can tweak. And we hope that this will help you to collaborate across departments. We also hope this will make communication easier by giving you some units that are consistent across different types of projects, across different departments. So you have kind of a comparable system for evaluating climate impacts. So now I will hand it over to my colleague Noah, who's going to take you through the tool and how it works.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaliyah. Okay, so for starters, I'm going to go through just really quickly. There's two really easy ways to install the tool. One is by going to the website, ghgcalculator.ssg.coop. And if you scroll down, there's a button to get it now. And that's going to launch the Microsoft Store. And again, you click get it now and you'll follow through the Microsoft account sign in and that kind of thing. And it will install it in Excel. The other way you can get it is if you've got Excel open and you'll want to go to the insert menu, insert ribbon, and you click on get add-ins. And that's, again, going to take you to the Microsoft Store. And I'm going to search for SSG. And, autocomplete there. Okay. And so the top results comes up as the GHG calculator by SSG. We also point out we have this other calculator we developed together with FCM for doing land use impact calculations. So that's something you might check out as well. It's also free. Anyway, I find the GHG calculator and just click add and accept the terms. And there we go. It's going to launch. A little intro to the interface. So when it first launches, we get some welcome slides that give you a little tour of what the tool does and how to use it. We're going to be going through that. So I'm going to skip this step. It's going to tell me it's also, we find it handier to resize it a little wider to make it easier to fill in the forms and see the information. I'm also I'm gonna sign it. You can register for a free account online. All this does is it makes it so that you can share and collaborate your results with other people on your team. So I have an account registered already. I'm going to go and log in. Okay, so I'm logged in now. And let's take a little bit more look around the interface here. There's a help screen, which can, again, you can launch those welcome slides. You can go and see tutorial videos, and you can download the user document. If you find any bugs or feedback, you can message us through there. There's an about screen that tells you just some basic information, what version you've got loaded. And that's it. So let's go back to the dashboard. And let's try making doing some different actions. So the first thing I want to do is a quick word about projects and actions. When we designed the calculator, we were working again with a number of different municipalities, and they each had their own processes and methods of tracking information, project codes and things like that. And so we wanted to make the projects the generic way to just sort of make collections of actions, and you can use that any way you want to. You might choose that you do one action per project, or you might have a whole collection of actions per project. So I'm going to start up a new project here. Let's put in Durham, and you can add project tags if you want. They're completely optional, just for sorting and filtering. And your contact information. And there's I'll cover this sharing button a little later. So I'm going to save that. So all the project is very basic, high level information, the title of the project. And you'll see that it's generated now for us a project worksheet. And again, it's got the information we just filled in, and it's got some tables, some summary tables that are going to start collecting all of the calculations that we're going to do. So I'm going to move from there then, and let's actually start doing some actions. So we've got two basic types. There's a capital action and a policy action. So capital things would, any kind of infrastructure things, buildings, transit, transportation. And we have time to do a few different, a few quick demos. So why don't I was thinking we could do a buildings one. Let's do a community center retrofit. And in here, let's say we're going to replace a natural gas boiler with air source heat pumps. And so here I've got a whole list of sectors that I can choose from: buildings, energy and renewables, financial activities, fleet and EV infrastructure, IT, parks, transportation and transit, waste, and finally water and wastewater. So I'm going to choose buildings here, and then I'm going to choose a subsector. We're looking at community center, and then these are the different calculation modules that relate to building, to community centers and buildings. In this case, what I say, we're going to do a community center retrofit. We're going to switch out a natural gas boiler. So I'm going to choose building equipment switch. And what year are we going to do it? Let's say that's going to happen in 2026. There's a number of metadata fields here that are optional, and in the interest of time, I'm going to skip these, but these fields all align with GPC reporting metadata, not requirements, but suggestions. So, okay, continue. Now, the first time I launch any given type of module, it's going to come up with a little info panel for me saying what this calculator is, how it's intended to be used, and where references where it came from. And you can actually find those at any time, because they don't appear after you've seen it once, but you can relaunch them anytime with this info button. So here we are looking at replacing our natural gas boiler. And we need to identify what the existing energy is. So here we probably have a little bit of grid electricity and natural gas, of course. So we could put these units in either absolute like numbers if we know like how many kilowatt hours per year that boiler uses and how many gigajoules of natural gas. I'm going to just ballpark it with percentages, and I'm going to say maybe it's 7% electricity for, fans and venting and pumps and so on. And we'll say it's 93% natural gas. And kind of, I guess it's going to use maybe 1,200 gigajoules a year. We need megajoules here, so I'm going to put 1.2 million megajoules. And we're switching that to heat pumps. So I'm going to choose grid electricity. And this time I'm going to just put 100% grid electricity, no other energy sources. And I think maybe we can cut that into a third. So let's put 400,000 megajoules and continue. And I'm going to enter the capital cost of that. Let's say it's $175,000 and calculate. And so it's come up with a summary screen for us here. You'll notice it's got the emission factors listed for the year that we wanted. I can click on those and get the references of where those emission factors are coming from. It's also got the global warming potential and the reference for that. And when I click save, it's going to generate an action worksheet for me. So now I've got my energy and emissions details calculated out from the start year of my project out to 2050. And down below, I also have all of the underlying inputs and assumptions, the emissions factors for grid electricity and natural gas, and the references where those sources came from. And if I go back to my project screen, it's added this line now into all my summary tables. So that's a buildings action. Why don't we try a transportation action? Here I'm going to say, let's replace fleet of utility vans. And so again, I'm going to go choose the sector. In this case, we're going to go fleet and EV infrastructure. And we're replacing some existing vehicles. And we've got replace existing vehicles. And let's say we're going to do that in 2025. I'm going to, again, just gloss over these metadata fields. And so once again, we get our pop-up info telling us what this module is about. And so let's say we're replacing 25 vans. I need to know how much those vans travel per year. I'm going to just say, let's say 20,000 kilometers. And we need to know what they're currently running on, gasoline. We need to know what their mileage is. We could choose miles per gallon or liters per 100 kilometers. I'm going to say 14 liters per 100 kilometers. We're going to select the energy source of the new vehicles is going to be grid electricity. And I'll need to know what my efficiency of those is. And rough ballpark here is I'm going to say 0.25 kilowatt hours per kilometer. And continue. So we said we're going to do 25 vehicles. Let's say they're $80,000 a piece. So I'm going to put a $2 million capital cost and calculate. And again, I get the summary screen and I'm going to save. And there's our replace utility vehicles action. And if I go back to the project again, now I can see I've got two actions in this project, one for this community center retrofit and one for the utility vans. And I was thinking, I think we have time. We'll do another demo and let's do a policy one. And actually let's do another municipality also for fun. So I'm going to just create another project. policy action demo. Let's put this one in Calgary. And I should maybe clarify too, is that you can have policy actions and capital actions all in the same project, but I just we'll do another project for fun. So in this case, we're going to do a policy action, and I was thinking maybe an interesting action would be to do a household retrofit program. And say we're gonna do improved insulation for 2,000 households, let's say. So here the policy sectors are slightly different. We just have these 4 to choose from: buildings, land use, transportation, and waste. And there's a number of categories of policies. And in this case, we're gonna find here a household retrofit program. So I think there are maybe close to 50 different modules in total between the capital and policy actions. Let's say the start year for this is 2028. Just pulling numbers out of the hat here. And I'm going to continue. And so I got a detailed description of what this module can calculate. And so in Calgary, I think we're going to be looking at, so we need to know what our existing energy sources are that we're hoping to reduce. So we're looking at, reducing heating, cooling demand on these houses. So I think again, we've got a little bit of grid electricity, and we've got natural gas most likely. And so let's say our furnaces are using maybe 12% electricity and 88% natural gas. And I got to think through here. So I think, let's say we're 90 gigajoules a year per household. We've got 2,000 households. So that's going to be 184 million megajoules. And we need to know what we're going to reduce that down to. I can either type it in here or slide it. I'm going to, let's say we're going to get it down to 140-ish. And so I guess more like 1,400,000 when I 140 and continue. And then let's say we're going to, so we said 2,000 households, we'll put in $1,000 per household through the program. So we're going to invest $2 million in this program, and I'm going to hit calculate. And again, same thing, we get our summary screen and save that. And so now, so I've got my household retrofit program calculated out here. And if I go back to so this is a separate project. So here I've got the one line for that. Oh, I wanted to point out one of the reasons to demo a different city too is if I go and I'm going to just go into edit this to bring it up. The energy sources are different in Calgary than they were in Durham, for example. So here we've also got downtown district energy and City of Calgary green electricity, which I didn't choose those, but those are because we've customized the tool for Calgary and included specific emissions factors for their district energy plant and for their green energy contract. So the one other thing I wanted to go over before we go into Q&A is the sharing and collaboration tools. So if I'm in say I've got this demo project and I want to share it with my colleagues, or maybe I'm in the sustainability office and I'm setting up some worksheets and I need some inputs from the transit department or from the parks department or whatever, that they have the numbers that I need. I could go and share this project with them. So I'm going to go in here and edit the project settings. And so when we go down to the sharing, and this is the one where you need to sign up for the free online account for that. And again, we're not you know, we're not using any of that information ourselves. It's really just you need to sign up and have your email in there so that if you lose your password or something, the system can retrieve it for you. So here I would be able to go, you know, my colleague, enter their email address, and I can add as many people as I want. And I choose what permission I want to give them. So I could either make it that all they can do is view things, and you know, and print out the spreadsheets. I could change it so they can edit a project, which means they would be able to create or edit or delete any actions in the project. Or I could give them full project permission, which means they could actually edit and delete the project settings itself along with all of the actions. So that's a bit about the sharing tool. And in this case, so I'm logged in here and I have another colleague shared something with me. I would see it here on this shared tab. So my projects and shared. And in this case, there's a downtown community center retrofit example project. Anyway, and it's got one action in there. So I could go and view that and see, oh, they were doing some rooftop solar, and I could help put in numbers or what have you. And that's my very quick tour of the tool. And I know that's a lot to take in, but hopefully as you're, you know, just download it for free and try it out. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Q&A.
Thanks so much, Noah, for this demo. We do have raised hands and questions and both in the Q&A in the chat. So I'm going to start first with the questions here in the Q&A box. Are the emissions factors and GWP values able to be manually modified?
No, they can't in this case.
Okay, next question.
So yeah, I mean the simple answer is no. They're coming from a standard reference, and the more detailed answer is we could customize the tool for your municipality, which we've done for a number of municipalities. And in that case, the emission factors are unique to that municipality, and particularly the ones that I think that people want to modify would be grid electricity, because the other ones, you know, gasoline, diesel, what have you, are all just basically standard combustion emission factors.
I can also just add that if your municipality has a similar kind of emissions factors to the municipalities that are already there, you could use the tool for comparability. And I think in the case of Ontario, Ottawa and Durham have pretty similar data to the municipalities in Ontario. So you would be able to use it to kind of test things in your location.
Thanks. Thanks, Alia, for tuning in and providing clarification. Next question is, how often are the emissions factor updated, and will SSG maintain this tool on an ongoing?
Yeah, good question. So we don't have a set schedule that we're updating emissions factors on, but I can say that the tool has been, you know, in its short life since we launched it, we're updating it multiple times a year. So as we get, if somebody comes with better or newer projections for emissions factors, we update it with that.
Thanks.
And we intend to continue updating it into the future. The second part of the question, absolutely.
Yeah, that will be great. Yes. Next question: can the calculator be used to estimate baseline emissions for a project, meaning without a separate target scenario?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I guess it would really depend on the project and what aspect of the project you're trying to calculate emissions for. But you could certainly use the tool to, say you want to know what the emissions are for a community center or arena or transit depot, and what your energy usage and energy sources are for that. You could certainly use one of the calculators, and it would calculate those emissions for you out to 2050.
Right. Will there be some way to include costs and savings?
Yeah, so the financials question comes up. So there are some very basic financial, capital costs in here. But when it comes to, say, incremental project costs and operating costs and savings and so on, basically we just made the decision that the main goal of this tool is to just help calculate the energy and emissions. And when we're dealing with so many different sectors and types of projects and infrastructure and so on, that the financials can get very complicated very quickly. And so I guess that the short answer there is no, and partly because it's complicated and we really wanted to focus on the energy and emissions.
Thanks, Noah, for answering these questions. More are coming. Thanks, everyone. And thanks so much for Amy, who on the back end is actually answering some of the questions. So does the tool include embodied carbon of solutions?
Yeah, that's a good question too. And the answer to that is no. So yeah, it's purely operational energy and emissions. So if you're building a new building and you want to capture the embodied carbon, that would have to be done as a separate calculation. And that's noted in a number of the modules themselves too. It specifically says on the pop-up that this does not include embodied carbon.
I think I did saw the embodied carbon description in the information as you were showing the demonstration. Yeah. Do you have any plans to tie this to red screen software?
No plans as of yet, but we're open to suggestions.
Thank you. Let's see. Does the tool calculate CO2 tons reduced per dollar invested?
Yeah, so it has a simple calculation on a base abatement. Sorry, that's not. Does it calculate tons per dollar investment?
Yeah.
It gives you a number of dollars per ton of abatement. And I think for some of those other things, you could take the results of it out and modify the spreadsheets and do whatever other calculations you would like to do.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm a bit focusing here because there are questions in the chat as well. And I'm going to take one of here. Is there a capability of estimating? Oh, we just answered this question about savings and cost. Does the tool handle the true cost for large-scale demolition of buildings?
So I guess that's could be a lot read into what the true cost is there, but so there are in basically every sector, if you have if there's a calculation that you're not finding in there, there is a generic emissions project or a generic energy project, and you can use that to capture any kind of calculation that is not provided with a customized form. So the cost of demolition, you would have to do some of your own calculation on that, but then you could include it in a project by using those generic forms.
Thanks. And thank you very much for some of the folks who are actually also answering questions in the chat, such as Bruce responding to the embodied carbon question. Next question is, are methane from a landfill or NOx from wastewater processing are also captured and can be calculated with the SSG tool?
Yep. Yep, there are a number of different waste-related modules. And I would have to refresh my memory on specifically on those modules and what's calculated, but I know there are some waste modules related to landfills.
Thanks. Here is another question, which is more of a clarification. When a bus runs through a municipality, the emissions factors depends on the distance running through the municipality. Is that correct? That's a bit specific, but I don't know if you can jump on this. And I think the kind of like continuation of this is that the NRCan approach is to look at volumes of fuel sold rather than in the tool that you presented. It's more of a liters used, right?
Yeah, I mean in IPCC there's a number of tiers of calculations you can do. But yeah, I think the fuel sales is a common way of calculating it. And I think what you're talking about would be, you know, if the bus is just running through your municipality, then capturing those scope 1 emissions for that traveling. Sorry, the questions disappeared for me on the Q&A, but but yeah, that's just to keep it in my mind. But yeah, that would be the way to calculate it. And I think that the tool here would be looking at wanting to know how many, well, you could either know the total energy, but more likely know how many liters of diesel is being used, and you would run it through the calculator that way.
Okay. I'm going to give you a little bit of a break now because there were a lot of questions coming so fast. And I know that Amy and Alia were answering some of the questions written, but a few of them were related to the cost and the fees to use the tool. Alia, can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. So if you would like to customize the tool, the fees are available on the website. And actually, Noah is the expert on the tool, so I'll let him speak to some of the benefits of customizing, and I'll throw the link in with the cost of customization.
Sure. Yeah. I think, you know, the benefits of customizing are, you know, obviously making sure that the emissions factors are accurate and aligned with what your sustainability department thinks they should be for your municipality. And also the potential of customizing those energy sources for your municipality if you have other energy sources that need to be included, such as district energy or any kind of generation. And then the other thing that comes with customizing is that we'll do a couple of training sessions and offer support for your municipality as well. And you'll have our ear for, you know, suggesting improvements to forms and adding new modules and so on.
Thanks so much for that. I just want to confirm that the hands that are up are for folks to ask their question verbally. Okay, one was removed. Chris, I can unmute you if you would like to ask your question verbally. Or if this was by mistake, then maybe you can raise your hand and we can continue with the questions in the Q&A. Which maybe was the case. Okay. Okay, I see that Amy is into that question. And the other one was more of clarification of what it meant, the true cost, which is, thank you, Dr. Kate Kennedy, for providing a little bit more detail on this. This is a cool question. I don't know, probably Alia, you can jump in on this, but like, how do we best collaborate between municipalities and level of government with climate action? It's on this webinar, we talk more about the kind of like the technical aspect of using the tool. So this is not truly related. And I don't know if Alia, you want to jump and provide some insight from that.
Sure. This is such a big question. And I would say there's a lot of better collaboration that could happen between different levels of government to tackle climate action. And I feel that municipalities can really play a role in pushing the envelope. Like if you look at what has happened and what is happening across Canada, municipalities, there's some municipalities that have more ambitious climate action goals than the federal government. In many cases, they've had climate action plans for longer. They've created multiple climate action plans, and most of these climate action plans show us that we have the solutions for responding to climate change. We know what to do about building emissions, transportation emissions, and waste emissions, but we just need to do it. And so I would say that municipalities could advocate for more collaboration and possibly join together with other groups kind of surrounding them. So metropolitan areas could work together on this and on implementing climate action rather than kind of working in their own silos. But I'm not that prepared to respond to this question today. So hopefully that provides some information, but maybe Noah or Emmy or Desi, do you have anything to add?
I can add a little bit, and you kind of like said it. It's about the voice of many municipalities, and to make sure that you raise your concern to the other levels of government. There are channels that this can happen. And we are Clean Air Partnership. We convene the Clean Air Council network, and as part of this, we are actually monitoring what's coming up on different levels of changes that may happen in either a provincial or federal level, and then we respond as a group of municipality, and the voice of group of municipality is stronger in the advocacy and to hopefully make changes. So this is kind of like our way of building this bridge and creating more meaningful connection and collaboration between the different levels of government. Thanks for that question. Yes, go ahead, Noah, sorry.
Sorry, no, I don't have an addition to that question, but I see multiple questions here from Dr. Keith Kennedy. And I can answer those. First of all, so thanks for clarifying on the true cost of buildings and demolition. And personally, I absolutely agree. And so maybe the clarification is that the building like the modules in here don't specifically include embodied carbon, but you could use the generic emissions project to add the embodied carbon to a building. So in what you're talking about of comparing, say, a new building to an old one, you could create two scenarios in Excel, one with the new building and one with the old, and you could use the various modules to calculate what they have available and then fill in the embodied carbon, using, there's some other great tools out there like the beam calculator to calculate embodied carbon. Your next question was, has this remained in private hands or is it going to be turned over to municipalities? And is it still in development mode? So we are still actively developing it, but it is also available completely for free to anybody that wants to use it. And we are also intending to make the code open source and be releasing that. So it's not on an open source repo right now, but so the tool is intended to be free for everybody to use. And in terms of Climate Atlantic, municipal.ca. I'm not sure who are members from that, or if that's from that organization. The closest I could say is that Fredericton is the only Atlantic municipality currently using it. And Matthew Edger is asking if it's possible to see the emission factors for Ottawa, Durham, Calgary, and Fredericton. And I'd say maybe the easiest way to get those is to just log into the tool and use it and run a project for each of those, and you'll get the printouts because they're quite in depth. There's multiple energy sources, and the emissions factors are projected out to 2050 for multiple gases. So hope that answers that question.
Thanks so much, Noah, for going ahead and answering questions. We have a few more minutes to answer questions, but I want to launch our poll while we have time and while you're still on the call. You should be able to see it. Okay, I see responses here, but we can take more questions in the rest 5 minutes that are left. The next one is, does the tool work for any municipality, or does it require customized for other outside of Calgary, Durham, and etc.? I believe you answered this, Noah. It is the free tool. It's working for every municipality, but if you want to customize it, then you need to reach SSG. Am I correct in this?
Yeah, I mean, the big difference for different municipalities is, so yes, you could use it for any, you could use it for anywhere in the world. You could use it for any municipality in Ontario or Alberta or wherever. The issue is going to be how accurate the emissions factors are, and that's really just going to come down to grid electricity, as well as maybe any local sources. And for the most part, the grid electricity is consistent across the province. So you could use Ottawa or Durham as a proxy for pretty much any Ontario municipality, for example, and you'll have accurate answers. And likewise in Calgary for Alberta ones, or the West Vancouver for British Columbia, etc.
Right. This is a good question. Have the results been compared to findings from other modeling projects?
So I would say maybe the answer to that is it's not really a modeling tool. It's more of a calculator. And so the calculations are just straight up, these are the standard ways of calculating these things. And so I think the question is if the emissions factors are accurate and where the references are, where those are coming from.
Mm-hmm. That was actually a question that I had as well. Let's say like a municipality is using, and this is what the question is, when you use the tool, where is the data stored? And actually, as you were presenting, I had the question of like, is there a limit of the storage actually?
Yeah, good question. So right now the data is stored on the Amazon cloud in the Montreal data center. Well, sorry, if you log in, if you register for the online account and log in, then the data gets stored there. If you don't log in, the data is only stored on your computer. And there's no limit to how much you store.
Right. Thank you. Sorry, I'm reading here the next questions. There are some municipalities that would like to work with you. That's great.
Yeah, send us a message.
Yes. And we will be sharing, recording the slides and the contacts as well with everyone that registered. So you have that information as well. Meanwhile, thanks everyone for responding to our evaluation questions. I'm going to end the poll, share the results so we are transparent, and you could see that we kind of like fulfill the expectations, which is great. and where the tool and kind of like the information can be used, we see that it's kind of like half-half between immediately and the next 2 to 6 months, which kind of speaks to the need of a tool like this to be used. Thanks so much. We do have 2 minutes left. I wanted to give time for Aliyah and know if you want to kind of like final thoughts or that you may have or comments.
I think it's wonderful that so many people joined, and thanks for your time to look into this. When we launched this tool with Ottawa and Durham and Calgary, their goal was really, they just thought this tool would be helpful for people and wanted to put something together. So
yeah, I'll just echo what Noah said. Thank you so much for joining us today and for your interest. Please reach out to us if you have questions about this tool, and we hope this webinar was useful.
Yeah, no.